Okay, ladies and gentlemen, hello to Jason Isaacs, hello to my mum, and hello to everyone out there. It is the 15th of July. If you detect a slightly weary tone in my voice, it's because this is the third time I've tried to record this, and we've had technical difficulties. We've had the team on from Sri Lanka online and talking to you, but unfortunately those recordings do not exist, so I'm slightly cheesed off with the electronics. Hopefully this is up and running, so I'm talking to myself again. I promise I'll get the team and some other guests for next time. I thought I'll get one in the can without all the frills, and then we'll move on to something a bit more frilly next time. So, what have we been doing? Now, if I'm repeating myself, I do apologise because, as I've said, I'm repeating myself. This is a picture of our brand new, spanking, shiny new camp in Sri Lanka. And you can see in the background there why there's a camp, because if you look, there's bits of the hillside that are just fallen off. But we'll come to Sri Lanka in a moment. That's where we are in the world. No real change from last month. Sri Lanka is ongoing. Paraguay, Ecuador, everything else is going on. Lots of flooding in Southeast Asia and China at the moment, but we've not been requested for help, and nor are we likely to do so. China's very private and very well adapted to dealing with huge disasters within their own borders without outside help. So, first slide. Sri Lanka. For those of you who missed it, big depression swept up through the Bay of Bengal, causing enormous amounts of damage, flooding, but it was the landslides that have really affected it. As you can see, there's half the hillside's gone off. Most of what I know about Sri Lanka is not much, but I can see where all the camps are by that distinctive scar on that hillside. You can actually follow where the photographs are taken by the shape and direction of those scars on the hillside from the previous photograph. There you go. I reckon that's the same scar. If you look at that and look at that, I reckon that the camp in the photograph is about just over Lizzie's shoulder there. I reckon it's about 5 or 6 miles parallel to that, looking at, where are we? There. So that's where I reckon. But at the moment we have 44 boxes with tents and occupants so far. We've got plenty of work to do. It's very slow going. We've had issues with a school being selected as part. Their land would be good to use, but the school themselves and the parents aren't too happy about that, so there's been negotiations around that. There's the preparation of the ground, terracing, clearing of vegetation, etc., etc., putting the water and the sanitation in before we put the boxes up. We could put the boxes and tents up, and chances of getting sanitation decrease dramatically then, because well, that's just the way it is. And then you'd have a slum. And then we've actually made their lives worse because they're catching diseases from living too close together and not having enough sanitation. So the team are diligently working. We've run out of availability with our team leads. So we've got Sam, who's a regular contributor and has been for the previous 2 recordings. It never worked, but he is now in Sri Lanka. He's doing his first day out there at the moment. Interesting little thing we picked up this morning is that's a camp, and you think, yeah, that's nice, that's all right. Now, first row on the left, yeah, great, looking good. Second row, yeah, looking great. Now, if you look at the doorways, they're pointing straight at each other. So one of the things that Comms 1 is going to be talking to the team about today is how about just tilting those tents ever so slightly. See the 2 in the foreground, same distance apart or thereabouts, but if you are looking out of the doorway, you're not looking directly into the tent of the other family. Therefore, there's a bit more dignity and a bit more privacy. So that's one modification we'll be suggesting to the team. Is, you know, we're all about dignity and privacy and respecting the beneficiary. So how about turning those tent doorways so you're not staring at your neighbour? Right, that's Sri Lanka. Moving on to Ecuador. Ecuador, as you know, earthquake, we sent a team working with ProGAD and Habitat for Humanity. 2,600 shelter kits went in way back in February time, I think it was. Oh no, so April, sorry, reading my own slider. We sent a team end of April. Everything pretty much bar the shouting is done there now, and we'll be sending a evaluation team to see how that got on. Now, being slow on the uptake, I've only just discovered the real significance of something that I knew about a few weeks ago. I knew that the shelter cluster had sent us a very complimentary email, which I'm getting as much mileage out of as I can, saying what a great distribution it was. But talking to Dave, who was our staff member on the deployment, he was saying that ProGuard themselves had no previous shelter kit experience at all. So our team basically has come full circle now, where we're actually teaching other agencies about shelter kits from our limited experience. And they're coming up with the goods, independently checked as being a good distribution. Now, if you look at that guy in that blue T-shirt, he's looking pretty proud of himself, and so he should do, because you look at that shelter, that's an absolute Bobby Dazzler. That door is better than the door on my house. Now, the great beauty of the shelter kit we've gone into, it integrates well, it's a recognized product, it's light, it's part of the solution, you can keep building with it. It's not like a tent, it's only got a certain amount of use and you can only use it as a tent. Shelter kit is ultimately flexible. But the design of the shelter that the people build is obviously culturally and geographically acceptable. Now, being close to the equator, that sun's going to be beating down on that shelter. So that smart guy right there, look at what he's done with those vents. So if the sun's beating down that tarp, making it hot, you'd make the interior quite hot and stifly. But as any breeze that drifts past that shelter is going to be taking that hot air away. If you get a cloudburst and it throws it down, then the water is going to run without going in those vents. So you've got a shelter that's specifically designed for its environment by the people. Of course, they're the smartest people to use because they know the environment better than anyone. And that's the beauty of the shelter kit. It is adaptable to each and every environment and the user, and using their skills and their knowledge and everything else. I mean, I'm sure he's not a builder, or he could be a builder, you never know. But that design is going to be taken from the design of the houses and everything else. You're absorbing that cultural knowledge in that. And looking at the bottom picture, you can tell, the good that we're doing. Look at that guy. He's absolutely made up. He's getting that shelter kit there. So that's Ecuador. Hopefully we'll have a bit more information to report back to you in a few months. Syria. Aleppo has now been closed off. Hand in hand for Syria, doing distributions of 750 tents, which is ongoing in northern Syria. The locations are as and when. It's a war zone. The need is moving around. It's being generated by the war. Access is also changeable, limited, and quite risky. So where those are going to be distributed is in northwestern Syria, but whereabouts we don't know yet, and it will be on an opportunity basis. IOM have finished the distribution of the UN tents, and 1,500 summer shelter kits are in distribution in Aleppo itself that we managed to rush to get the kit there before it's got closed off, and unfortunately Aleppo is now closed off. Moving on to Iraq, heavy fighting in Iraq is going to cause some displacement. 390 sealing off kits has been done. We're in negotiations with ACTED about where we go from there. We have stocks of tents in Iraq, just over 100, and hopefully those will be going out in the near future to respond, been a long day, to respond to the ongoing violence and displacement in Iraq. Not on this slide, as it's just happening today, is that there's been a special call for additional solar lighting for helping people who are in current shelter programs, which we are part of, and they need lanterns and LED lights. Now, it's interesting that the shelter cluster would be calling for that, which kind of, if they're calling for this specifically, then it shows that it's a vital item. It's a security item, that people know where people are when they're using these lights. People can see where they're going. People feel safer. It discourages attacks when you can see everything that's going on. And also, it extends people's days, their dignity, their lives. It allows them to get on with housework or schoolwork or whatever it is that normalizes their life. They can get on with that in the light with these solar lights. If it goes dark at 6, 7 o'clock, they've got the rest of the evening with light rather than it just going pitch black with no electricity. So it's interesting they should be calling for that. It shows that it is a specific item. So we're looking into the feasibility of supporting that with stocks that we've got, because we've got a few thousand luminades in the warehouse, and they're better out in Iraq doing good rather than sat in our warehouse. However, one of our ethos is it's got to be, we only do it as part of our programs, of the shelter programs, which it could be because we're doing shelter programs in Iraq, but also if it's not part of a shelter program, then it's got to be, it's got to be life-threatening, like mosquito nets or water filters, something that you can't morally look the other way when people are asking you for it. The debate we're having in the ops room is whether those lights are actually life dependent, whether they actually do shore up people's lives. Security element and the fact that the shelter cluster is specifically asking for this is certainly that, and we're asking those questions to see whether we can run our ethos at it and come at the end with a decision. Paraguay, flooding ongoing. Most of the kits have been done. There's only just a few kits left, and those 100 shelter boxes are going to be distributed. If not, they'll go back in storage for the next time. We will put a team into Paraguay in the near future if availability allows. Nigerian crisis, ongoing displacement, 50,000 displaced from northern Nigeria, unfortunately, ongoing violence. We put another additional 224 boxes from our Accra warehouse with the UN into Niger, and we've got another 120 boxes that weren't used in Fiji that are arriving in Accra. We've decided that we're going to put those in there as well. Because the situation is so dire and things are going pretty well with plan. Now in Cameroon, the aid is in the camps, it is going out. The team are looking at going out, as I'm sure if you've caught any of the updates, you know that this has been one of our plans for months. Unusual in the extreme to have these ongoing events that we know are going to happen and keep happening in Cameroon and Niger and Syria are unusual, well, certainly unusual in our 6-year history of an ongoing year upon year disaster that we would still count as a disaster and not a routine event. And that's our last slide. So yeah, quite a quick one. We have run the budget very, very hard. At one point, I think we'd used 2/3 of the year's budget in a third of the year. For that Aleppo crisis and the Cameroon crisis and Niger crisis. The big moral conundrum is, you get down to the storm and argue, oh, you can't have that, someone might need it. What happens if something tomorrow, you can't give it all away because somebody else might actually need it. So we are now down to just Sri Lanka. There are possibilities. We have a film crew going out. In fact, they should have arrived now in Sri Lanka to film some stuff for some publicity work for later on in the year. And we have the Southeast Asia issues that probably won't affect us. We've got South Sudan is collapsing, or certainly got a civil war. We're looking at possibilities there, although it's very, very difficult. The corruption, theft and difficulties of operating means that you're probably only best using established big partners that we've got a track record with, and very, very high security sort of elements with that. So a difficult place to operate, but we'll see if we've got any partners who can do any work and if we've got any budget left to do that with. Apart from that, we're rolling into hurricane season. America has got a big heat wave coming, which will put energy into the oceans, which will certainly probably going to come out in increased hurricane activity and increased weather activity triggered by the extra heat. Meteorologists out there might be going, no, that's terrible, that's wrong, but that's my beliefs. But we'll see in a couple of months. So that pretty much is where we're at. As usual, ALFE, if you've got any questions, points to note, point out my shortcomings. And that's about it. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully I'll see you again soon, and hopefully I will actually have some real live people on deployment, and believe me, I did try. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you next time.